Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you today. Looks like you got a fresh new haircut there. You're looking sharp, and a
Yeah,
beard trim. You're looking sharp.
yeah. Clean up. Although it was funny, literally within a day, someone's like, Kip needs to grow a beard. I'm like, oh my gosh, just because I trimmed it up too much. Everyone's a
That's
critic.
probably. I think that what you have on your face right there is my 2 o'clock shadow probably. So
And as much as I would like,
hold on, hold on,
oh, go
Kip. You're
ahead.
getting some. I think you're getting some weird feedback again. Is it picking up the wrong mic?
Nope, I got the right
Oh,
mic,
okay, there it
Scarlet.
goes. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
It
All
just
right.
it was rough there for a second. It almost blew out my eardrum. So
Well, it's just because of my masculine voice.
that's what it is. That's exactly. All right. Proceed. You were about to say something very insightful, I'm
No,
sure.
well, it wasn't actually. I was just saying that as much as I don't know. I'm not as hairy as some guys. And as I get older, I'm like, I'm actually grateful because I am too lazy to have to manage a lot of hair growth all the time. So I've
Yeah.
accepted my lot of thinner facial hair, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you, mom and dad.
Yeah. I'm one of those hairy guys that just has always had to deal with it. So it is
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Eighth grade, you're shaving. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, even my son, my oldest, he's got like hair on his armpits and a little happy trail going on. I'm like, holy cow, he's you can see a little mustache in the right light on his upper lip. I'm like, dang,
Yeah.
kid, this guy's killing it. Not
I
kid
love it.
anymore. Holy cow.
Well,
So yeah,
and I
all is
love
good here
how
on this end. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say I love how shaving is like a little bit of a rites of passage. Do you remember doing like shaving prematurely as a kid where you're like, I don't
Yeah, it's like,
really need
what
to
are you
shave, but I'm gonna
shaving?
shave anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have my dad wasn't around to teach me. So I remember my mom showing me how to shave my face. So that was kind
Yeah.
of even now. I mean, it was like she had to do what she had to do. But even now, I'm like, oh man, that's something that would have been really cool. So I've already
Yeah.
had that lesson with Brecken just because he's pretty close to, he doesn't really need to, but he's pretty close actually. So
Yeah. And it's pretty
yeah.
nasty when they get like random gross hairs. You know what I mean? And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
And
you
they
got to
think it's
shave.
cool. That's the funny thing. They think it's cool. It's like, look at my mustache. I'm like, don't brag about that. Like, shave that
Yeah.
off. Trust me,
Yeah.
you don't want that right now. So
That's
yeah.
funny. Good
Well, Kip, I
times.
gotta tell you, I'm nursing a knee issue, by the way, similar to what you were nursing several months ago.
There's a little bit of happiness that entered my
I
soul
know.
when you're like, oh, I hurt my knee. I'm
I
like,
know.
good.
I know. Yeah, it hurt,
You
dude.
pop
It popped. Yeah, it
knee
popped.
bar, heel hook, or
No, I was in side control. I don't know why he did it. Bless his heart.
and
Um,
pulled your ankle towards him.
but like didn't do it like jerked it. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And just jerked on his pop. And I'm like, oh, just rolled over in agony and laid there for about 2 minutes. And I'm like, all right, I think it's okay. Let's keep training. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, let's keep training. So I kept training and it felt pretty good. But that was the adrenaline and everything else going.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
got done with
Blood's still
training.
flowing.
Yeah. And I felt it from my calf all the way up into my ass. And I'm like, oh, this is like if it was just isolated, I would
Yeah.
have thought, okay, it's just a little sore. But I felt it in my entire leg. I'm like, oh, this is a problem. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to training tonight. We'll see how it goes.
Did you at least smash him or anything during that? Hey, let's keep. That's what you wanted to keep going. You're like,
Yeah,
well, no,
choked
no,
him out, man.
let's keep going.
I choked him out. I knee barred him and did it right back to him. No, I heel hooked him. No, I didn't do that.
That's
No, I don't
funny.
know. We just kept training. It was fine. It is what it
I
is.
that brace, I'm telling you, the one I sent you, check that out. That thing's pretty. I mean, it's expensive, but I've been wearing that and I don't feel any pain in my
You
knee
wear
at
it when you
all. But
train or what?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
it has like metal brackets down the sides, but it keeps them covered and padding. So you're not, you know what I mean, driving a metal rod into someone's face or hip or
Oh, that's
whatever.
what I want. I want like spikes on it.
Yeah. But it works pretty good. Prevents me from moving
Turning that
my knee
laterally.
sideways. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
check it out.
Well, other than that, all is good, man. Book's almost done.
Saw that.
Yeah. things are good. Podcast downloads are up. So it's all good. Well, let's get into some questions,
Cool.
man.
Yeah, for sure. So we're fielding questions from the Foundry, which is the platform that the Iron Council uses, our exclusive brotherhood. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. You can sign up for a newsletter, but just so you guys know, not currently opening, and we'll have probably an opening later March, mid-March, possibly.
Yeah, beginning or middle of March, it'll open back up. So make sure you're getting notified on that, because those will go quick. Those spots will go quick.
Yeah, they went really fast this last time. So, all right, Cordell Neely, I'm 26-year-old. I am planning on taking action in 2022 and finally move to a new state by myself. Can you elaborate on any experiences you might have had moving from Utah to Maine in regards to preparing and dealing with family members or friends unsupportive of the move multiple states away?
I don't look, that's an easy one. That's an easy one to answer. It's your life. Like, no, this is a weird thing. I feel like generally a lot of people believe that they need to be supported in order to move forward with something, or they need the praises and the accolades and the approval in order to progress down their own personal path. And although it would be nice to have, you definitely want people who are supportive of what you're doing. It isn't a prerequisite for moving forward in what you think is effective way. So as a 26-year-old man, come on now, like, there's going to be people who are supportive. There's going to be people who are not. There's going to be others who are indifferent. And so what they think of what you're doing is irrelevant. The only people it matters to is you and anybody that you've committed to. So your wife, for example, your children. I would definitely take my wife's approval into consideration as I consider moving her across the country. That might be something you'd want to do because you've made that commitment. But I haven't made a commitment to my mother for her to approve everything I do. I haven't made a commitment to my friends to just perpetually just be there forever, so they're comfortable with the way I choose to live my life. So the best thing you can do is get over it and live your life, do what you know you need to be doing, look for the good, work hard, and that's it. And then you just let the chips fall where they may. What other people think of what I'm doing is largely irrelevant. With the caveat, again, I say this caveat, the people that are impacted by the decisions I'm making. Yeah. Because I'm not the 0 F's kind of mentality where it's like, I don't care what I've never been that. There are people I care about what they think, even mentors who I'm like, okay, well, what do you think? And I would take what they say into consideration, but no, I don't need people's approval to make my own decisions as a man.
Copy. Drew Lewis, Ryan, if you were asked what 3 key elements and experiences are most effective and consistent in the transformational development from the state of immature masculine to the mature masculine, what would they be?
I would say personal responsibility, just owning your own decisions and your own choices. Like even that last question lacked a little bit of personal responsibility when you're worried about what other people think, because what you're doing essentially is you're pinning it on somebody else. You're saying, well, the reason I really hesitated about moving is because somebody else didn't like it. Okay, but it's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility. I know plenty of grown males, they're not acting like men, who constantly blame other people for their circumstances and their scenarios and their lack of opportunity and their lack of results in their life. Man, just start owning that stuff, even to a fault. I would say that's owning it to a fault is better than the fault of not owning anything and making excuses for everything in your life. So I would say personal responsibility. That's it. I know he's asking for 2 or 3. That's it. When you own, and then outside of that, it's your ability. Here's what I'm thinking I would say is learning to become a producer rather than a consumer.
Yeah.
And let me make sure I put this little caveat in here as well. All of us consume. There's nothing wrong with being a consumer. Like I buy things, I require food for energy. Like I consume. We're consumptive creatures. That's not the problem. The problem is when you consume more than you produce. That's what I mean by being a consumer. And a producer is somebody who produces more than he consumes. So when you think about children, young boys, young girls, they're and I'm not talking about the emotional worth for a parent, or even their worth as a human being, but primarily they're consumers, right? They require time, energy, attention, food, money. You got to put food on the table, roof over their head. They got to go to sports. You got to drive them around. They're not adding income to the house. They're not participating in the bills. They might have some chores and things like that, but they're largely consumers. And we expect that, because we're teaching them how to be producers. But there comes a point in time where that scale needs to shift from primarily consumption to primarily production. And I think that's a maturity conversation, because I know young men. My oldest is one of them. And of course I'm biased, but he is a young man who really understands this concept, and he tries to add maximum value where he can. He gets it, even in some cases, more than a lot of grown males get it. So I think when you're talking about immaturity, it's about personal responsibility and then moving from a consumer to a producer.
Zach Underhill, expecting our second child next month. From your experience, what are the biggest challenges that present themselves when adding another child to the family, and how did you navigate these challenges?
I think for us, the biggest challenge was making sure that the previous kids still get the time and attention they need from me and mom. I think that's really, really important, because it's easy to place all of your time and energy and attention and emphasis on, the newborn. And to a degree, it's needed. It's required. They need physically more resources, talking about consuming versus producing. They need more of your resources than an older child might. So I would say, depending on, did he say how old his first was?
He didn't.
I would say depending on the age, of course, but let's just say maybe 3 to 5, I would say on average. If I had to guess, I'd probably say kids 3 to 5, still take time individually. Hey, we're going to go out and we're going to go to Dairy Queen and get a Blizzard, or we're just you and me, mom's going to hang out here and take a nap with the baby, but you and me, we're going to go to the park and hang out. And by the way, sometimes that's actually all you can do. It's good for the kid, but you know who else it's good for? Mom, right? Because you can't breastfeed the baby, contrary to popular belief. You can't do all the things that the baby needs, but what you can do is take little Timmy or little Susie out, spend some good quality time with them, so mom can really rest and get some time with the newborn, which is, I think, going to be really helpful for her as well. But the best thing you can do is just give your first the time and attention that they're naturally going to lose when you bring a new baby into the house.
For sure. I was talking with some friends last week, and I don't know, I was getting on the topic of the importance of consistency and structure for children. And I was suggesting that I think it's critical for kids to have consistent structure, because for them, their unknowns are different than our adult unknowns, right? And as adults, the unknown, the unplanned ends up becoming, those are adult versions of stress, right? And for a kid, it's the same thing, but their unknowns are slightly different. And I think bringing a new child into the family is an unknown. And so I think there's some probably proactive approach that you can take about how this is going to go, and what's your existing child's relationship, and what role does he play or she play in the new baby, and really set a precedence ahead of time. So then that way they can have some comfort and stability around what this means to have this baby join the family. You might be clear in your head, but it's probably completely unclear to them. And you're shaking up the status quo, right, by introducing a new kid. So I think there's some prep that you could do to really help in that process too.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. I think there's some exceptions to that. I'll explain what I mean in a minute. But one thing you also led me to think was including your first child in the process with the baby. For example, I don't know whether your newborn is going to breastfeed or not, but let's just say hypothetically that he or she is not. Well, you can have your 4-year-old help mom feed the baby.
Yeah.
Right. If she's on a bottle or he's on a bottle, and that gives her an opportunity, or help tuck the baby in, or, like big brothers, big sisters, they love that stuff until they get to like 8 or 9 years old, and then they hate it.
Yeah.
So you might as well take advantage of it right now. But if you can get big brother, big sister involved in the process, they're going to feel more included and welcomed and an important part. And they are an important part of the family. But what I was going to say with the exception to consistency and structure is that I've seen a lot of parents who go overboard with it and they turn into helicopter parents.
Yeah.
And they coddle,
try to control
and they
everything.
bubble wrap, and they don't let their kids have any sort of challenge or adversity or hardship. I've seen parents who, maybe all of us are spending time together for the week or the weekend, or maybe at the park for a day, and then they leave, and it's like, well, why are you guys leaving? Oh, well, the baby needs to take a nap. Like, I think the baby could take a nap an hour and a half later. Like, you're here spending time with all of us. And it gets a little bit overbearing at points. So structure and stability, but also kids are resilient and they need hardship and they need to be introduced within reason to some discomfort. So make sure you're not stripping all of that away from them. And I don't think you're suggesting that, but it does happen.
It does happen. Yeah. And right in your example, it's like, it's for me, it always seems like it's the first time parents. They're the ones that are true. Like, well, Timmy has the schedule. And then by the time like 2, 3, 4 comes along, they're just like, yeah, he's outside in the car, everyone relax. I'm just joking. But you know what I mean? It's like, you get so hands off by the time you have a couple more down the pipe.
Or I think like in that example, you're playing at the park. If you have your 4th kid, you're like, I'm not leaving to give him a nap. You look over and he like fell asleep in the swing or something, or in the dirt, he's drooling in the dirt. You're like, see, he's taking a nap. He does it on his own now. He's good. I remember with our first, he had this really strange habit of eating rocks. Like, he'd put rocks in his mouth or he'd be on the carpet and he would see like, I don't know, a cockroach or something and like eat it. And, as a first time parent, you're like, oh, and you're like freaked out. And by the time because we have 4, he eats a cockroach. I'm like, that's protein. It's good for him.
Yeah.
Like, totally. You just or he's eating rocks. He'll poop them out. Like, it's fine. It's good. Totally. And it just matters less because you realize, of course, within reason, they're pretty resilient little creatures.
Yeah. Koa, he's our 6th, right? He's 3 right now. For the last year, he eats the dog's food all the time. And we're totally like, Bubby, that's gross. And that's it. And he's like, I like it. He's like, I like it. And we're like, all right.
Fine. Have at it.
You're okay. Yeah. He's down there all 4s like a dog. I'm like, nah, he's okay.
I think that's why it seems to me the last child is always like the biggest handful. And I'm not totally sure why that is. Maybe God like saves the ones that are a handful for the last because he doesn't have to trick you. Well, no, I think he just knows he doesn't have to trick you into having any more. You've already said you're done. So he's like, cool, I'll give you the a-hole on the last one. You're like, thanks. You give me the little angel, on the first one, so I have more, and then you give me the devil on the last one.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. Maybe it just has something to do with like, hey, you're on your own, pal. And so they just like build this level of just disdain and resentment and resilience and like this independence that the other kids weren't required to have.
When you learn as parent, like, I think the big thing is you learn to choose your battles. And your first kid, everything was the battle. Now it's like, I'll pick and choose what I'm going to get mad about.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
All right. Justin Jelsma, what are you men currently listening to on podcasts and or books that you're reading? We only listen to this podcast. So
yeah. Is there other podcasts? I thought this was the only one that existed.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Actually I started listening to, I've been so consumed with writing the book. I haven't read a whole lot, admittedly, but I did start listening to 1984 the other day. And that's some crazy, crazy stuff.
It is crazy.
It's not that far-fetched either. That's the amazing thing. Not that far-fetched. It's not even amazing.
It's quite disturbing.
Yeah. The 1984. As far as podcasts go, probably the same that you guys listen to. I listen to, I actually listen to a lot of Rogan. And I listen to Rogan because he's so good at what he does. And I don't think people fully realize or appreciate it. Like, they like his podcast and they like his guests, but
They
I
don't
don't think
appreciate
they
his
don't
role in it.
appreciate,
Yeah.
which is fine. I get it. Why would they?
Yeah. You're nerding out when you're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like somebody who watches UFC for the first time or MMA of any form, and they're like, "This is
Yeah, they're like-
stupid," because they're
just
grappling
rolling on the ground. Yeah. They're
Right.
just like wrestling. You're like, no,
Yeah.
they're trying to hurt each other's technique happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to see what they want to see is they want to see him stand up and engage in kickboxing or Muay Thai. Like, that's what they're really looking for. And they get in the clinch or they get on the ground. They're like, this is stupid. But somebody who knows it is like, this is the best fight of all time. What are you talking about?
Totally.
So I listen to Rogan a lot because I'm not with I was going to say critical, not critical, analytical, with an analytical ear. Like, oh, how did he transition into that? How did he close out the interview? How did he start the interview? How did he get somebody back on track that maybe was deviated a little bit? So that's pretty good. I listen to more like political commentary. So I listen to a lot of Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro. They have a podcast called Morning Wire, which is a nice little intro to the day. It talks about 3 or 5 political or culturally charged issues, and it gives a little report on them over 15 minutes. I listen to that one pretty much every day.
That's your news.
Yeah, I mean, the same. Yeah, I mean, the same things you guys listen to, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I won't even mention any podcasts. I think in the Iron Council, we're wrapping up The Confidence Gap. So that's a recent book.
Right. Yep.
Robert Greene's book, The Laws of Human Nature. My son read it first and he's like, Dad, you got to read this book, and we all know Robert Greene. So, but that's actually a really good book. And then Culture Code is another book I just recently wrapped up. So I don't know. There you go.
Cool. Yep.
All right. Brett Godfrey, how do you know that it's the right time to start dating after a divorce?
I don't think you will know. How do you know?
Dude,
how do you
start
know
before you get divorced, bro. If your marriage is shit, just start.
It's easy.
Start now.
Yeah. Might as well see if there's anything better out there before you decide to throw in the towel on what you have.
Oh my gosh. We're all joking. We're joking.
I know you almost have to say that anymore. It seems like, so here's what I would say is, I mean, you're asking the question, maybe it's time to start dating.
Yeah.
But here's what I would be cautious of is try to lower. I wouldn't say your standard of women. That's not what I'm saying, but try to lower the expectation of where it would lead to. So don't lower your standards. That's not what I'm saying. But lower the expectation of, like, the next woman you go on a date with, she's probably not going to be your next wife, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, just go have fun, enjoy the company of a woman. Like, I enjoy women's company, not romantically, but there's something women bring to the table, and that's nice.
And go back to dating, which was what you like, what you don't like, and get back on that path of determining what that is. Don't try to backfill the position of wife.
Right. And I don't even know if I would really measure them against, okay, is this somebody I could marry? I think maybe just enjoy a woman's company. And that's the goal right now.
Yeah.
But I will say this, don't neglect yourself. All right. If you're talking about dating women, I would say it should be 95% attention on yourself right now and 5% attention on another woman. Like, get your finances in order, get your mind right, make sure your health is in check, make sure work is going well. You're doing your diet, you're doing your exercise, you're doing your meditation and your visualization, you're planning for the future. Get all of that locked in. And I think the need or the desire or the wonder about when to start dating, I think that probably starts to resolve itself as you start to get better with yourself. Because I've never been through a divorce. I went through that separation with my wife early in our marriage. Man, that was a hard time. And it was the darkest time of my life. And so I had to get a lot of things right before I was ready for anything else. Dating, like I didn't date women because we were still married, but like work was struggling. My health was like, there was so much that was going wrong at the time. And I just focused on those things I could control. Fortunately, my wife and I were able to reconcile. I know that doesn't always work out, of course, but you'll be better off if you do it that way.
Yeah. What didn't work for me, that bitch. So Brett, Brett, here's the deal. You ready? And you may not like this answer. So first, your divorce is your fault. And if you don't feel that way, figure out how it was and then fix whatever that was. And then I say you're in a better position to be dating. I don't think you need to be perfect to start dating, but like I literally had this conversation with a friend last week and they're like, oh, they're asking like when they should start dating again. I'm like, well, has he like grown and evolved into a better man because he's already like in another relationship, right? And they're like, oh no, like he's the same guy. And sometimes when we do that, we're like, oh, so he thinks that this next woman, it's going to magically just work out and that nothing that he's bringing to the table contributed to his first divorce. So I'm going to lean on more on the negative side is like, are you the same man? And if you are, that's probably not going to work out well for you because guess what? It didn't work out and you played a big part in it. So figure out what part you played, sure that up, and make sure that you're not falling into a committed relationship and putting that on that other individual that like, oh, because she's the right one, it's going to work this time. Like you got to get clear on where you went wrong.
Yeah. I think that's well said. The only thing I would change with what you said is I don't know that I would use the word fault and instead I would use the word responsibility. Now look, it could maybe be your fault. Like that actually could be true.
Yeah.
And so I'm not discounting that. But it doesn't inherently mean it was your fault. And it isn't 100% your fault, but it is 100% your responsibility.
Correct.
So now, I think fault kind of puts a period on the end of the thought. Like, oh, that was my fault. It sucked. I messed up. And responsibility is a comma like that. Okay, it didn't work out, but it is my responsibility. And so I'm going to do these things moving forward.
Yeah.
And it might just be semantics. So use whatever word you want, but the point remains like, don't wallow in it, fix it. And that's what you said, is you said, okay, now figure out how you can become a better man so that you can improve yourself enough that when the next relationship takes place, that it's going to be a different circumstance than it was this one.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hesitant to say this just because I feel that book seems so controversial. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. But what enters my mind when I read this question by Brett is like, you should probably read Rational Male at the same time. But what's your take?
I mean, yeah, I look, I think having information is great. But when you take one bit of information and you turn it into doctrine,
the Bible,
yeah, like the canon, canonized word, it becomes a problem. And especially in the red pill and manosphere space, because a lot of that comes from immaturity and a lot of it comes from hurt men who haven't learned to deal with the pain they've encountered in a healthy way. So what I will say is that you're going to find some good information in the Rational Male and other books like that, but don't allow it to become your sole doctrine. And I would say the same thing about anything that I've written.
Almost every book. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Sovereignty is the book, and like you could take that to the extreme and it could really create some real problems for you. So just be careful, like read good stuff, get good information, and take it all with a grain of salt and all within the context of what you personally are dealing with, and then round it out with other practical advice and timeless information that's available.
Yeah. Matt Testerman, with over 1,000 members in the Iron Council, will there come a time when inactive members will be asked to leave to make room for new members? Whether it be changes in membership requirements, participation requirements, physical standards, and etc.
I don't know that I would ask what was the word he used? What did he say about non-participating members or something? What was
inactive?
Inactive.
Would inactive members have membership requirements around participation and physical standards, et cetera?
No, probably not. And I'll tell you why, is because we have a lot of guys in the Iron Council who participate to varying degrees. So
yeah,
you might be hyper engaged with a very powerful team of men. You're all working together. You're holding each other accountable. But I'll tell you from experience that there's other men in the Iron Council that, for whatever the reason, they either can't be on a team or aren't interested in being on a team for a myriad of reasons. And yet they're still engaged. You know, they'll show up on the Friday call. They're still doing their battle plans, but they're not as engaged as you might be. And so do you call that an inactive member, or do you just call it somebody who's participating to a different degree than you are?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you and I are good examples of that, per se, right? Theoretically, well, we're on the leadership team, but it's not the same as what a standard member is on a battle team. But it's not like we're not doing our battle plans. We're not actively participating in other ways. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I probably not. You know, as far as participation requirements, I leave that to the teams. You know, each team has their own culture and their own standard. And we work closely with our battle team leaders to ensure that they are doing what they need to do individually, and also that they are capable of leading other men to improve the quality of their lives. So that's a team thing. Now, I have thought about elevated experiences, we'll call it, where there are some requirements for not only participation, but your metrics when it comes to health, your metrics when it comes to financial success. And we're going to take the cream of the crop. And yes, there will be other softer metrics that we'll have to weigh as we interview specific people. And we start creating more of an elite unit of men who have proven that they're high caliber and they're capable of leading themselves and others well. So stay tuned for that. I've been thinking about that over this past several months.
I don't know why, but that stuff just, it's interesting. That stuff like gets me excited.
Well, because you're a high caliber guy.
Yeah. When I think about it, like, no one here, body fat needs to be a percentage. You know what I mean? It's like,
right. Because you're a high caliber person. And so you want to be around high caliber people. And look, body fat isn't the only metric. Wealth isn't the only metric, but they're indicators that you should pay attention to. Yeah. And look, and we'll have guys will be like, well, that's not fair. I want to be part of that. Cool. Then get your stuff in check and you can be part of it. And this is a thing in society. Like, you're not supposed to exclude anybody. You're not supposed to make anybody feel unwelcome or inferior or any of that stuff. And look, if we put something like this together, it's not to exclude people. That's not the reason. Now, it will be exclusionary by design because it has to. Because if it's inclusive to everybody, then it means nothing. So it's the same thing with women. You know, Matt Walsh, he's going viral right now because it's Dr. Phil thing. Yeah. And he has a great point. He's like, what does woman mean? And nobody can define it. I can define it. Rational people can define what woman means because we all know it's a female. But some people on the left just can't define it, or they won't. That's probably more accurate.
Yeah.
They won't define it. Well, okay. If woman means nothing, then it's open to everybody and it's subject to interpretation, and it means nothing. If you can't define it, it means nothing. And then therefore, why would a man be worried about being a woman? You can't even define what it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but clothes, those are just social, or what do they call them? Social constructs. Okay, then why are you so concerned with wearing what we would call women's clothing? If they're just social constructs and you're trying to break down traditional gender norms, why are you wearing girls' clothes to prove a point?
Yeah, if wearing clothes doesn't matter. Yeah, or what the clothes you wear don't matter.
Or a dress. If you're telling me, for example, that a dress is just a social construct, which I actually can get behind, sure, because if you're, in Scotland 400 years ago, you were wearing a kilt.
Yeah.
Tonga, exactly. You're wearing,
Yeah.
I don't know what they call it in Tonga, but you're wearing what we would call a skirt. Lava. Okay. So yes, it is cultural. 100% it is. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I'm saying is that if you think it's so irrelevant as to what we wear, then why are you, a man, wearing a dress to prove that you're a woman, which is something that you can't even define? That's where I get hung up.
Yeah.
Who knows how we got onto that tangent? Holy cow. What was the
but
question?
Yes, maybe
even?
Stay tuned. Elite version.
Oh yeah. Holy cow.
Of the Iron Council.
Way off track.
No dresses allowed. Yeah.
Unless you're Scottish or Tongan. Yeah. There might be some other cultures in there.
Travis Froome, how do you determine what your future vision looks like while going through a separation? Seems to be difficult to figure out how to do so personally when things are so uncertain with relationships with my wife, and that having such a big role to play in it.
Just make it's just a little better than what it is today.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, for you to, at the stage that you're going through in your life right now, for you to imagine, let's just throw some concepts out there, for you to imagine that you're happily married with another woman and you guys are connected and you're intimate and you love each other and business is going well and you're making money hand over fist and you're going on experiences. And if you have kids through this existing marriage, you have a deeply, deeply connected relationship with all of your kids. I got to be honest, even from where I sit, that seems to me a pretty hard sell. Like, I'm not sure how you sell yourself on that vision when you are where you are right now. And that's hard. And now you see, you want to, but you can't. And I get why you can't. And then you start to feel down on yourself because, you're not doing it right, quote unquote, doing it right. Just cast a little bit out into the future. Hey, you know what? I'm going to get through this. And it's hard right now, but I know over the coming months, in the next 12 months or so, that I'm going to come to terms with this. I'm going to try to be amicable in this. I'm going to be as connected with my kids as possible. And so you just cast to where you can see a little bit further than where you're comfortable or where you're at right now. And then when you get to that point, you cast a little further and a little further and a little further. And as your life starts to change and improve and get better, and now maybe you're interested in another woman, you cast that vision further because you're more capable of mentally and emotionally doing it. You just can't do it right now. So don't get hung up on like, I need to cast my vision of the perfect life. No, just be a little better than today. That tomorrow you're going to have maybe some new strategies for coping with the reality of your situation. And so maybe you pick up jujitsu, maybe you go weight train, maybe you decide to put together a group of men who meets every Saturday morning for, an F3 or whatever. I don't know, whatever your thing is, golf, hit the driving range or hit the links. And you just cast it a little further than where it is now, knowing that it will improve down the road.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Ryan, you can relate to this. I mean, Travis, super tough scenario, right? I remember when my ex-wife and I, when she first moved out, had an apartment, and we're in this separation, this limbo state of not knowing what we're doing or not knowing how she might react. I think the key thing, at least a thought that comes to mind that I think is critical, is deal in reality. And the reality of it is you're separated. So what are you going to do with what you got? And put a vision around that, not around like, well, I need to know if she's in or out before I can execute.
Yeah, you're not going to know that.
You got to execute on what you got in the moment, right? And so if you're 100% on board of like, hey, I'm going to improve myself and I'm going to show up still in a very powerful way in my relationship with her, then to your point, cast that out, and that's your focus. And until that changes, keep your course. Because I do feel like, and I was the same way, I really felt uneasy with the uncertainty of it. And I felt like I couldn't progress without knowing what we were what was going to happen. And unfortunately, that might take a while, and you don't want to be in that kind of limbo state where you're not progressing in a positive way and showing up in a positive way and putting that back on her, right? You decide, how are you going to show up in spite of the circumstances? What kind of man are you going to be? Focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look at it, imagine this, you're in a dark forest and it's pitch black out. You know, the clouds are covering up the moon and you can't see the stars and it's just dark, right? But you've got a flashlight. And so you turn that flashlight on, you look around, you get your bearings, you find the trail, and you cast that flashlight out. That flashlight is only going to go so far, right? Yeah. And so you cast it out there and you see it. And so you start walking, you know, okay, well, there's a path. I don't know where it leads. I don't know what it looks like, but that's the path. And you start walking. Okay. There's going to be a bend in the trail that you can't see from where you are right now. But when you get to that bend in the trail and you've got your flashlight and you turn that corner, you're going to see more than you saw today. But you only get to see more if you're willing to take the next step. And the beautiful thing about it is that as you're walking with your flashlight, every step you take, your flashlight goes a step further. So the vision gets further. You never catch up with your vision. So that might bring you some solace too. Like I could be at the pinnacle of my achievement today, and I will never catch up with the vision I have for my future. So you look around and you see these guys who are hyper successful, and even them, they haven't realized their ultimate vision because it's still out there. You're never going to catch up with it, but you got to cast it and you got to be willing to take the next few steps and then the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yeah, I like that. Bruce Lee. I recently came across a quote by Epictetus about wintering ourselves. We must undergo a hard winter training and not rush into things for which we haven't prepared. Referring to Greek warriors continuing to train in harsh winter conditions to better prepare battles in spring, putting ourselves intentionally uncomfortable situations in order to better prepare for harder times. Outside of jiu-jitsu and cold water immersion, have you come across any other techniques that work for you?
Generally, I would say no. Generally, for me, it's physically related. It has to be physically related for me. Yeah. So yeah, jujitsu is part of that. You said outside of jujitsu, generally no, but yeah, there's 1,000 other things you can do other than jujitsu. You can do
depends on training. What's uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, strength training, maybe running a marathon, or just learning to run in general. Maybe it's some sort of a relay race or learning to bike or swim, like the things that I know you've done, or you want to hike a certain peak in your area of where you live. Like, to me, it's got to be physically related, because I think for men generally, maybe more so, our physical growth and our mental and emotional growth are inextricably connected. Like they are so deeply connected that our physical suffering can trigger mental and emotional development. And so I find it through jiu-jitsu, but you could find it on the mountain. You could find it hiking. You could find it in isolation. But yeah, physically, I think it's the best way for men. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's it.
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about public speaking, Ryan, it's kind of a physical element too, even with that. Like if I was afraid of public speaking and I signed up to present something in front of a bunch of people, like I could do that in my mind, but that's a different story than walking up on that stage and going, okay, I'm confronting something that causes a lot of uncomfort here. Right. And so I mean, maybe Bruce, one of the ways you do this is, what are those areas that you're uncomfortable?
Right.
You're uncomfortable getting punched in the face? Sign up for a martial art. See what that feels like. Yeah. If it's public speaking, go to Toastmasters, figure out where you're uncomfortable, what you're avoiding, and maybe perhaps go after it with reason.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. That's a good indicator, is if it's and look, I'm not saying that anything that is uncomfortable you should do, because if it has no meaning for you, then why? I'm not telling you to go like go beat yourself up for no reason. That's silly. But if there's something that sounds meaningful and important to you, then yeah, I think being uncomfortable or having some discomfort over it is a good enough reason to pursue it.
Yeah. Jeff Fluitt, I have someone in my life whose actions are not always consistent with what he says he values. When with a smaller, more familiar group, he holds true to his values. When interacting with a wider group, he does not. Do I just accept this is who he is, or do I try to help him course correct? If so, how?
Oh, I would try to help course correct. Like, he's a friend. Is it a friend or a family member? Did he say?
Someone in his life. So I would assume that, but yeah.
It's a friend or a family member. If it's not, I mean, maybe it's less important that you do, but if it's a friend, like, why wouldn't you do that? Now, there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. But if it's a friend, absolutely you should. And so one thing is obviously be an example. That's kind of the primary answer, being an example. But let's just say you have that checked off. You are already being an example. I think you probably should talk to him. This depends on your relationship with this person, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch for you to go say, hey, Kip, I've noticed a few things, and man, I love you and I want you to win and I want you to thrive and succeed. And I feel compelled to give you a little bit of feedback that I think might help you. Are you open to that? If I sense any sort of hesitancy, I probably wouldn't share it. Like if you're like, but if you said, yeah, I'm open to that, I'd be like, okay. And I would try to be as tactful as possible. But yeah, I think if you're a friend, you have a responsibility to friend somebody, which means that you're going to have to do some things that aren't always comfortable and aren't always safe. And part of that means that if a friend's struggling, then you need to bring it up. Now, if you bring it up and he continues to do it, okay, well, like, you've done what you can do, and then you got to let it ride from there. You don't need to keep beating it up. You don't need to keep bringing it up over and over again. And at that point, I would say, okay, well, this is just the way he is. And until he asks for my help, or he's struggling, like really struggling, then I'm just not going to step in. But I think the first course of action is to address it. Yeah, 100%. Wouldn't you say?
Totally. And I do think, let me ask you this, Ryan. If I were, I think it's different if I was annoyed by you. So if you were showing up a certain way and it's pissing me off, that's different. That's a different strategy than if I'm like, man, you know what, Ryan, I see the potential, man, but you're shooting yourself in the heel. You know what I mean? And I want to help you. That has more genuine to it. The other one might just be you're being a victim and you're being easily triggered by someone else and you want to make them wrong for the way they're showing up. That's different. And I want to be really clear on that. Right. But if it's coming from a position of like, I had a conversation with someone last week about, I had a really difficult conversation for an hour and a half with someone literally last week about this very kind of this thing. Like, dude, you're doing okay. Right. I'm not criticizing you, but your potential is over here. And I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you're not keeping up with your commitments. Right. And how can I help you? Like, it was really from a genuine place of like, how do I help you level up so you could take advantage of more opportunities and growth? But it wasn't from a position of me being frustrated or annoyed. And those are two different things.
Yeah, I think that's well said. You really do have to evaluate your motives. If you're just frustrated, deal with it or move along or don't spend time with that person. But if you care about somebody, then I was just writing on this idea in the book. If you care about somebody, then that means you want to serve that person. And in order to serve another person, there has to be an element of sacrifice. You can't serve if there's no sacrifice. It's not service. If you're not sacrificing something. So in this case, if you care about somebody enough that you want to serve them, then the sacrifice is your own discomfort. And that's probably really why you'd even question whether or not to have the conversation. The guy needs it. It'd really help if he implemented your advice. Okay. He's going to be uncomfortable too. We already got that. But are you more worried about your own sense of security than you are about his well-being? Because if you are, you won't do it. Right. Like,
yeah.
And here's what we say. We say like, I don't want to put like that person in an uncomfortable position. No, I don't think so. I think you don't want you to be in an uncomfortable situation.
By
but
him
again,
being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Or him being pissed or upset or whatever. Yeah. So the motive is you. So again, if you're really wanting to serve somebody, there's a sacrifice. There's a price to be paid. And in this case, it's discomfort, or the sacrifice is your own comfort.
Yeah.
And the risk of losing a friend. Like that's another thing that could happen actually. You know, and I've seen that. Like a friend goes and approaches somebody and is like, hey man, I really care about you. And I just got to put this out there. And they've lost friendships. That's a real risk. Totally. But that's the price that needs to be paid if you really are a friend. If not, just be an acquaintance, and that's good enough. Totally. But a friend is something deeper.
And what's fun about this, or related to this, and it's kind of a fun conversation I was having with one of my employees last week about having difficult conversations and coming across wrong. And I suggested to them that when you get the mindset right, you'll come across correctly. In most cases, it's usually like, you know, when most people come across like arrogant or overly critical, it's because they're probably arrogant and overly critical. So like you want to do a really good job at helping someone, get clear in your head first. And why are you truly wanting to help them? And it gets a hell of a lot easier to approach it tactically and carefully, because you have the right mindset and it's going to come across genuine, your body language and everything.
That's a really good point. I mean, here's how you know somebody is they'll say things. Well, I'm just telling the truth. I'm just calling it like I see it. Okay. That has nothing to do with you wanting to help somebody. It has to do with you liking the sound of your own voice, or you want to jack yourself off enough to feel good about what you're doing. I'm just being honest, bro.
Yourself. Yeah.
I'm just being honest. Why don't you? Okay. That's not what we do when we help people. It's not about being honest. It's about delivering a message in a way that will resonate. Yes, you want to be truthful about it, of course, but that's not the motive. Yeah. The motive is not to be honest. The motive is I want to serve this person, and I'm going to use honesty to help that, or I'm going to use certain language, and I'm not going to use other language, and I'm going to worry about the inflection of my voice and the tone and the volume, because I really want this message to land, because I think it'll help somebody. And somebody that comes with the attitude of like, what's your problem, bro? I'm just being truthful. I'm just calling it like it is. If you can't handle it, that has nothing to do with the other person you say you're trying to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. Colton Briner. How do I control feeling like I'm better than almost everyone? You know what? We're going to skip this question. Ryan's not going to be able to help you.
Are you serious? Is that really
No, I'm just joking. Actually, it is a question. No, it is a legit question. I'm just playing. All right, let me read it again. Like, how do I control feeling like I'm better than almost everyone I come in contact with? I'm currently doing phase 2 of Live Hard program and knocking out almost every quadrant on my battle plan. And I feel myself pushing myself and growing towards my vision and goals. But when it comes to having mundane conversations about sports on TV or how many beers to drink, I can't help but feel like why I even wasted my time talking to that person. I still have compassion and I want to see others improve, but the ones that have shown no interest in it, I can't see the reason to even carry on a worthless conversation. Thanks for all you guys do. You know what? We can't relate, Colton. We can't relate. I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's a ballsy question. Like I do appreciate the honesty about it for sure.
Oh, and let's be honest. You feel the same way, Ryan. I mean, if you
relate,
if you did a meetup and all the guys were like talking about the sports game, about how, you know, so-and-so got plastered the night before, you'd be like, why am I hanging around these idiots?
Right. So, but I don't jump to like, I'm better than them. When I hear that, like that, like, so like if a guy
just like they're on a different path.
Right. And I'm not interested in walking on that path. And so I don't think I'm better than them. I'm just not interested in that path. Like it's never crossed my mind that I'm like, these guys are losers because they're talking about the Super Bowl. I'm like, I don't care about, I don't even know who's in this. I don't even know who's winning the Super Bowl or who's in it, or I don't even know when it is, like, because I don't care about that. But like other guys, like I think there's more important things to worry about. But if a guy's like, yeah, I'm really worried about this particular team that made it to the Super Bowl, all the power to you, bro. I hope whatever you are looking for in life is yours. And I genuinely mean that. Like, I hope you get what you want. But I'm not better than them. So I think we need to be careful of casting our own desires and ambitions on other people. I think this is kind of a stoic philosophy too, is like, who am I to say that my path is your path? And people will tell me that all the time. Ryan, somebody the other day is like, you're getting a little preachy on the blah, blah, blah on my Instagram or whatever. And I'm like, preachy? Like, that's my job. My job is to tell you my opinion.
That's why you follow me, right? Because I'm preachy.
And if you don't like what I'm saying, then find somebody else who you like what I'm saying. I just don't understand why we think that we need to project ourselves onto other people. And this, I think, requires a level of maturity to the point where you're like, I really don't care at this point what people do. I'm going to try to do everything I can to help them win and to give them the tools and resources that I think will help, to give them information, to bring guests on the podcast. But I got to wash my hands after that. Like I can't wrap up my success in what you do or you don't do. And it's arrogant to believe, to think like that anyways.
Yeah.
Like, just you get on the path that you want to get on, find other people who are already on that path. And by the way, they could be ahead of you or behind you on the path. And there's value to both. Like, there's guys that I have in my circle who are further ahead of me on the path. And there's guys who aren't as far along as me on the path, but they're still my brothers because we're all on the same path. And I'm going to help them and I'm going to have them help me. And it's just better that way. Now, if somebody else is not on the path, I'm going to shake their hand. I'm going to look them right in the eye and I'm going to say, I wish you really well on the path. Here's where I'll be. If you ever feel like you want to walk this path with me, let me know. You are welcome anytime. And then be done. And that's okay. But there's a little bitterness in this question. And I think maybe it's because I'm not trying to project here, but I think maybe it's because you don't have the caliber of men in your corner that you should. And you're just hoping all these other guys will become that. And they just might not.
And they're not meeting your expectation, right? It's like, no, you shouldn't be this way. And one thing I've always loved, and I know it's a play on words and a thought process, but it's helped me deal with difficult relationships of my life, is that if I were Ryan and I was raised the way that Ryan was raised, I would make the same decisions he makes. And so there's some power in just having some empathy. You know, it's like, you know what, everyone's on a different place and they're on that place because a whole lot of different circumstances. And who am I to, back to what you're saying, who am I to say they should be any different, right, at this time in their life? And then be okay with where people are, you know?
And what
but
does
I
that
agree.
have to do with you anyways? Like, so the guy wants to drink beer and, you know, talk about the weather or sports. What does that have to do with me? That doesn't impact my life. Now, if I had somebody in my life that I was relying on, like my wife wasn't elevating her life, okay, those would be conversations we need to be having.
And it's affecting you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if some guy is like not on the same playing field as me or whatever, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, okay.
I bet you're right, Ryan. And we're projecting on you a little bit. It was Colton, but you know, maybe he doesn't have those guys in his life, right? And he's kind of getting tired, you know. It's like,
I get that.
Shit,
I can definitely understand that.
People that's on the same path as me and it's getting old. You just need to find those guys. So that way you won't project on these guys as much. You'll be as annoyed by these other guys once you get the
that's why I started the Iron Council.
Yeah.
Like I've told you guys, the reason I started because of this question. like all the guys that I knew were more interested in the parties and the, hanging out on the weekend or where they're going to Mexico or Lake Powell or whatever. They were so concerned with that, and they weren't concerned with the things I was concerned with. And it was frustrating. That's a frustrating thing. So then I started to make relationships with people who were on a different path. And that became less important to me, what other people did or how they spent their time. In fact, some of those people are still my friends because they've changed their life and they've gotten on another path. Might have taken a different route than it took me, but they're on that path now. And, we still spend time together. We still talk and have conversations, but like, you got to find those people and you got to become that kind of man, and you got to go where those guys are. And then you got to add a value into their lives. And that's how you become friends with these type of people.
Totally. Yeah. And if you want your mind really blown, just realize that Ryan wanted friends because he had none, and somehow got 1,000 friends willing to pay him to be his
to
friend.
Be my friend.
Like, who pulls that shit off, right? Like, that's awesome.
That's hilarious. I haven't thought about it like that, but that's actually really funny.
Paid friend membership for the guy who had no friends.
That's right.
It's quite impressive.
That's funny, man. That's really funny. All right, what else we got? Let's take a couple more.
Okay. One more. I got a jet after this one, if that's okay.
Okay,
so John, he's like, he even gave me the pronunciation.
I saw that
pronunciation of it. Jenkinson. All right. John Jenkinson. The area I struggle with is building meaningful, intentional relationship and friendships with other people in my community. My observations are that there are stages we experience as we get older, where there are friendships we develop due to when our kids were younger with other adults, as they get into their teens, and we lose those connections. It doesn't help that I've been a loner most of my life and cautious of making new friends, as I have inherent skepticism of others due to underlying issues that I left a mark on me. Sorry, I'm slaughtering this, John. The question is, how do I overcome this? I'm 51. I feel confident in who I am as a husband and a man, though I feel I set in my ways in many aspects.
How do I overcome what? How do I overcome? He said he's a loner. He's the skepticism of other people.
Yeah. And maybe like, well, what it sounds like is we have friendships. Our kids were like teenagers together. Then we lose those friendships because they don't have the common kid thing anymore. He's older and he's overly, cautious, it sounds like, with establishing relationships. How do I move on or generate better relationships as he's older?
Well, what I'm hearing when you say that is, do you even feel like you need these relationships?
It's true, right?
Because to me, the way I'm hearing this question is like, I'm good. I'm set. I'm comfortable. I got things dialed in. And so like, it almost to me sounds like there's some sort of external belief that you're supposed to have these friends, but you really don't quite believe it in your own heart and mind. So if that is an accurate read, then yeah, of course you're going to struggle making friends. Of course you're going to have skepticism. You don't even know the reason why you would want to have friends. So I would start there. Is it that you can't make friends, or that people can't be friendly with you? Or is it that you don't see the value in it? And that actually goes back a little bit to the last question of like, and if all your friendships are just kind of trivial and nonsensical and unimportant, then why would you be optimistic towards? Right. Why would you be optimistic towards that? So what I would do and suggest, if I'm reading this correctly, maybe I'm completely off base, is start thinking about why this would be good for you in the first place. And is it something you actually need? Now, I think it is, but I'm not going to answer that for you. You're going to have to determine if having a couple of guys in your corner, high caliber men in your corner, are worth the risk. This goes back to your skepticism, worth the risk of engaging in a relationship with. And again, it's a give and take. It's service. So there's an element of risk. You have to determine whether or not it's worth it. I think it is. I think you're going to be more fulfilled. I think you're going to have somebody to talk with. I think somebody's going to help you be more accountable to what you want to accomplish. I think they're going to challenge you in ways that maybe your wife can't. because she's a woman and she's your wife, not to diminish her role at all. And so I think it's valuable. And if it is, then you need to risk the whatever it is you're afraid of. I don't know what you're afraid of, but you need to risk that in order to go out and get what it is that you want and why it will serve you.
So Ryan, once he comes to that conclusion, recommendations of, okay, it's worth the risk. Now what?
Yeah. Go where those guys go, where they congregate. Successful people are involved in business. If you're a little bit older, let's say you're retired, and I don't know, John, if you are or not, but let's say you're on the tail end of your career. That might be at golfing or a country club or something like that. Also, another great place is charitable organizations within your community. Like, I know a lot of ultra successful businessmen who are involved in Lions Club and Rotary and these sorts of things. And, maybe they've retired or they're on the tail end of their career. And so they're looking for ways to give back and still be involved in the community and still feel like they want to be active and contribute. And those are great places. And they would love to have, they're always looking for more members. So go visit Rotary, go visit Lions Club. Maybe it's a VFW or American Legion, and go to the, I don't know if you're in the military, but go to those places and put yourself in their environments and then try to add value and serve. And you're going to find high caliber men in those places for sure.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. So we mentioned a couple things. Reminder, if you're interested in perhaps joining the Iron Council when we open that up, go to the website, subscribe to the newsletter, or follow Mr. Mickler on the social media. To learn more about the IC, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council, and to follow Ryan on Instagram and Twitter, that's at Ryan Mickler. Anything else you would ask, sir? Maybe ratings and reviews, I think was something.
Yeah, that's always helpful. Yeah. Ratings and reviews. Just take 30 seconds. Like, we want this to be a two-way street, like we're trying to add value. We're trying to get good information to you. And, we're doing that. I can confidently say we're doing that because we have a very successful podcast and we've been doing this for 7 years. In exchange, we would ask that you just take 30 seconds, 60 seconds, jump in there, leave a rating review on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening. And it goes a long way. If tens of thousands of you do that, we bump that visibility up. We get this information to more men. And frankly, society becomes better. I get so many messages from people who are like, what can I do? How do I get involved? What can I do? What can I leave a rating and review? Oh no, something else. Okay. Well, I'm giving you things that you can do. This is a very small and simple thing that you can do. And then we'll build from there. There's other things too. That's not the only thing, but it is a thing. So we would ask for that. That's all I got.
Excellent. Okay,
cool. All right, you guys. Well, we will be back on Friday. Go listen to yesterday's podcast with Brian Callen. I think you guys will really enjoy that one. It was a very entertaining, informative conversation for me, that's for sure. And then we'll see you on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.